What is going on, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen? The ACMGS Gamer here. Today we have kind of a long form article from the good people over at Kotaku. Um, an update on Skull and Bones, as you'll read in the title. This was a game that a lot of people were excited for, and now we kind of know why it hasn't come out yet. So, with that, let's get into it. I'm only going to read some highlighted parts and give us summaries about basically what was said. If you want to read the full article, you can check that in the link down in the description down below. So first of all, the title is what caught my eye. First, it was an Assassin's Creed expansion. Now it's Ubisoft's 8-year nightmare. So let's get into it. Apparently, quote, nobody knew what the fuck they were doing, asking different developers. And, when nobody knows what they're doing in a Ubisoft studio, that's a pretty bad sign of things to come. Skull and Bones development began back in 2013 as a multiplayer expansion to Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag that would release as a post-launch update. Three sources with knowledge of the project origin said. I don't think that this was actually that widely known. I believe all that was really widely known, for example, was that they basically took the ship mechanics from Assassin's Creed Black Flag and kind of turned it into a multiplayer game. I don't think that many people knew that it was originally going to be an update that turned into a full-scale game of its own volition. Skull and Bones was originally supposed to launch in late 2018, then sometime in 2019, then sometime after March 2020, and sometime before March 2022, and now it's due to come out before March 2023. Production led by Ubisoft Singapore has been advancing well over the past 12 months, and it promises better than ever. Ubisoft CEO Frederick Duguay, I don't know how to say it, said during the same meeting the additional time will allow the team to fully deliver on its vision. Skull and Bones never had a clear creative vision behind it, suffered from too many managers vying for power, and was plagued by almost annual reboots and many refreshes, they said. Years in development, the basic questions around the game's core design still haven't been nailed down, even as ambitions for the would-be game as a service continue to mount with Ubisoft's head Paris office. According to three sources, the project has already cost Ubisoft more than $120 million, with that number continuing to balloon as hundreds of developers from other Ubisoft studios continue pitching in to try and ship the game without any more delays. But three sources also told Kotaku that a deal with the Singapore government requires the game be made, basically. In addition to hiring a certain number of people at its Singapore studio in exchange for generous subsidies, they said Ubisoft Singapore must also launch original brand new IPs within the next few years. And then I couldn't highlight anything else, so basically I have the rest of the article summarized. Like I said, you can go down the link down in the description down below and look at it. Other stuff that they said was, quote, one current developer compared the project's trajectory to BioWare's Anthem, another big multiplayer games as a service that looked great in demos but launched broken and incomplete. They go on to say that when they thought about launching the PS4 and Xbox... when they thought about launching the game, the PS4 and the Xbox One had just come out, and by that point, Black Flag originally released on the 360, and its technology was dated, so they had to kind of take what they had and either update it or go back, start from scratch. And to give you guys kind of a breakdown of the timeline here, in 2017, the game was made as a session-based shooter that was kind of modeled after Rainbow Six Siege, that was more about the positioning of the boats and the gunplay, and it was more about a PvP grind, player versus player, no PvE at this point. It was later the next year that we got PvE, player versus enemy, and that's when we got the players would join together to take down AI targets, and they added a little bit of resource management, and they compared the PvE of that to like the Division, where you can team up with your friends and take down targets with 4 people. And then 2 years later after that, in 2020, apparently they're not sure what the exact finish line is, because they didn't have a clear line to begin with. They have no idea, the type of mechanics that they want. And they go on to describe different in-house issues, and I kind of summarized those. And basically, um, the in-house issues are that they've had 3 different creative directors come in, or 3 different leadership, I guess, creative directors come in. And when the creative directors came in, they changed everyone in leadership positions. So they changed the leadership teams to kind of go in the direction the creative director wanted. But the issue is that the creative director, when they were talking about things they wanted to implement into the game, they would go back to ideas they had originally, but they didn't implement because this, that, or the other. Another reason why this game apparently isn't working really well is because they had one team that came off of like the Ghost Recon multiplayer, and they had another team that came from like the Assassin's Creed style. So they had 2 different methods, 2 different styles of working, and they're supposed to work together. That didn't really work well. And apparently the game managing was done by a committee, even though they had a creative director. I guess they had to run stuff by their leadership team, which led to votes of yes, we want this, or votes we don't want that, which is how stuff kept getting brought up from the past that certain people wanted to do, and then they were outvoted, and then they were voted in, and then you have people working on those ideas or those assets just to be thrown away the next time that the creative director came in and changed everything. The original idea for this game was to just have the boats and to travel by water. And this was the core idea that they had. And a lot of people were like, well, we kind of want it more like Black Flag a little bit, where at least we as a person, or we as a player, could play a person, play a pirate, and customize our character and, upgrade our ship and this, that, and the other. And apparently that was a question that the developer teams still had to figure out. They didn't know if, you were playing as a boat or if you were playing as a person. And apparently the decision for a player to go on land was added after the original idea, and all the assets that they had were only for the boats in the water. So then they had to go in and create, the land areas and areas for players to walk on and everything. And they just had this giant design loop. And I believe that's basically it. There's this one little bit here that said, according to 3 current and former developers, Skull and Bones lost 6 months to a year on issues like the ones I just mentioned about the design loop and the adding of the adding of the player going on land. There's another quote here. They just started asking the whole team for the 2016 design documents when it originally was concepted, because that's what they wanted to do again. Said one former developer, we went full circle, just plus a giant layer of crafting. Let's see, other questions around the quest structure, character progression, and having a seamless open world versus smaller instance spaces would get debated, something enclosed, and then later relitigated. Would the game have huge maps like Ubisoft's other games, or would it be broken up in separate chunks like, say, Warframe? So it's just stuff like this, where it's like the core design of the game, the gameplay, depending on if they wanted the player to do it, then how would they do like inventory management? Would they do inventory management? How does the economy work? This, that, and the other. And it's just, I don't know. This part I found a little interesting. Instead of dropping back down to a small core team of several dozen who could find the fun and hammer out the new vision for the game, hundreds were left to keep working on unclear priorities, never quite sure just how dramatically the scope and direction had actually shifted. Here's what I was talking about. Whenever the game's shape pivoted, the requirements, the progression, and the economy and the player motivation would also have to pivot. In the session-based shooter version of the game, pretty much all you care about is maybe ammunition, how good you are at turning, and what your level is. Maybe when you become a survival game, you need to care about things like how big is my hold, how many bananas can I hold, how do I maximize my profits by selling all of this stuff. And apparently throughout this, the teams, they were given busy work to do. And so, I mean, you can't really blame them, because you have constantly changing expectations and leadership. And, you know, if I were an artist, I'd be like, well, what's the point of me doing all this work on this new concept design based on what you gave me, when all that's going to happen is it's just going to get thrown out the window anyways. I mean, I bet you could probably sell that as some sort of concept art if you really wanted to. You don't let your teams push too hard when nothing is settled, said one former developer. You don't push quality to the sky on stuff that will just get thrown out months later. Throughout these years, a great exodus from the studio continued, said 3 current and former developers. Basically, you'd have people like the creative directors who would show up, try to do what the previous one did, realize it didn't work, and then you'd have a bunch of people leave. It seems like they have kind of an issue like Ubisoft, for example, or not Ubisoft, they are Ubisoft, kind of an issue like Naughty Dog, where they got fed up with some of the crunch in the process. Not necessarily that Ubisoft's dealing with crunch, but I'm saying that when Naughty Dog dealt with crunch, it took a while for them to do The Last of Us Part 2, because a huge part of the team left in the middle of Uncharted, and they lost a lot of their senior talented people. So they're having to deal with junior level artists and technicians to do this because they've lost all their creative teams. And then if you look at the Glassdoor review page for Ubisoft Singapore, it's full of complaints about uncompetitive salaries, wage discrimination, office politics, toxic managers made it hard to work to succeed, and ultimately drove people away. They also may have been responsible in part of Singapore's failure to get Skull and Bones out the door. According to several sources, some senior managers would surround themselves with yes men. They were so often men instead of women. Refused to listen to suggestions or concerns repeatedly raised by those on the studio floor, and then sell Persona version of the game that couldn't be made given the existing resources and timetables. Those who continued to voice their dissent would eventually be disappeared either to another team, another project, another studio. Toxic culture permeating the Singapore studio is of no small part and responsibility for more of the production issues, reboots, rebrands, and reshoots that have plagued Skull and Bones for decades. Was another part of it. Since the beginning, this project has always been driven by fear. Some of the issues came to head last year. Ubisoft as a whole reckoned with the allegations of sexual misconduct and bullying. That's an entirely different video. They go on to talk about how Avatar finally got off the ground with the new trailer that they released. And apparently, I think that was it. What's this? I love video games because of the real innovation and magic. Comes from when our teams and players are free to create. Yves Guillemot said during the height of Vivendi's hostile takeover, free to innovate, free to express themselves, free to take risks and have the fun. When you are free, there is no failure, Guillemot said. There is only forward. Time will tell if that becomes true for Skull and Bones. So, that was a very edited, long-form article from Kotaku. Once again, if you want to check out that whole article, not summarized or voiced over by me, that will be in the link down in the description down below. And it's very interesting that this article comes out now, because recently a lot of people were like, where's Skull and Bones? And now we know that apparently it is just stuck in development hell. And this isn't the only game that a lot of people are asking about where it is. A lot of people, myself included, are wondering where Beyond Good and Evil 2 is, because they had, for a while, they did a bunch of Twitch stream updates on the game, like how it was progressing, and those stopped, I want to say 2.5-3 years ago now, I believe, and nobody has really heard from them since, so we'll see how that goes. But thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.